Hello and welcome to another episode of Digi-Tools in Accrual World, brought to you by the Digital Disruptors, the go-to place for all your accounting tech knowledge and the community that is picking up speed once more thanks to some shake-up changes that we made in 2025. We are really coming with a bit of a bang. We've launched our new website, which makes it easier for you to find and sift shorts according to what you might like to search for, topical issues or sponsors, and you can digest little nuggets of information and goodness that make it much easier for you to stay on top of what's happening within your app stack. On top of that, we're going to be launching a few more of the events and our academy programs on the new website, which you'll be able to see and join and express an interest if you'd like to sign up or register for them early, just based on what's coming down the track. But before we go any further, I'm going to introduce our lovely co-host, lovely co-host, John Toon. We're making some big changes, aren't we, John? So it's not just going to be me and you this year, or me, you and Ryan. We've got some new friendlies coming. So this is probably one of the last episodes we'll record where it's just our dulcet tones. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel very excited about this. I mean, I think switching it up a little bit, having some guest presenters and stuff on there will give us a little bit of a different perspective, different voices, different ideas. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, there's 2026. Who knows what's going to happen this year? I mean, it's going to be a little bit nuts, right? With all of the changes that we're expecting, maybe we'll see a resurgence of the likes of Xero and QuickBooks and others. Maybe we'll see some exciting product development from them. Yeah, I think we've got loads to do. We've got loads to go at. And like you say, some exciting things from us, particularly around community, particularly about building some bridges with other people to kind of expand our reach and grow a little bit. So it's going to be great. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I like it. And this week's episode has been sponsored and made possible by the lovely FYI. FYI, we spent a bit of time speaking to them lately about their plans for 2026, really taking good shape. We met with them recently, didn't we, John? So Tell us more. What do you think? How's their 2026 shaping up to look?
Well, I think FYI's 2026 is going to be another record year. I mean, I think when I last spoke to Ian, which is a couple of weeks ago, they had a cracking 2025. They've been growing every year in the UK, really doing great things, and obviously around the world as well. I mean, whisper it, but they may even be looking at breaking into the US market. But there's more to come from them. Obviously they launched, the practice management functionality and tools fairly recently. They've got some new AI functionality coming into the product as well. And I think people in medium and larger practices are starting to wake up and realize that there are better alternatives than the incumbent products that they're using currently. And so there's a great opportunity for the likes of FYI to expand their footprint into those kind of firms.
John and FYI, snaps. Okay, great. And so shall we kick off with our app news this week?
Let's do it.
So I spotted, and it makes me very proud to see it, Sage topped the leaderboard for FTSE 100 when they announced on a regular Tuesday morning that they announced a 10% increase in revenue for the first quarter of its financial year. Revenues came in at 674 million for the 3 months up to December 2025, and most of that growth was said to be broad-based across regional and product portfolios. So things like Sage Business Cloud, which saw a 15% increase, with cloud native revenue rising 24%, and also looking at the different territories. So North America, revenue grew by 13% to 304 million. The UK and Ireland and Africa saw a 10% increase to 194 million. And Europe grew 7% to 176 million. Overall, just super proud to see one of our big UK companies doing so well. And also the fact that they have been making strong changes to their product. They're talking about the innovation that they've invested in across their AI-powered platform, which I'll come on to shortly. And they, I think this looks really positive for the remainder of the year. We saw a lot of growth by acquisition in the previous years taking place by Sage, but it feels like they're coming into their own with a more defined vision of how Sage in itself is becoming once more a technology giant for innovation. Given the size of them, it's great to see how they are embracing change so quickly compared to some of the other much larger accounting softwares and ERPs. It feels like they're still acting very startup in their mindset.
Yeah, I mean, this is very exciting news from Sage, isn't it? Almost tempting me back into buying Sage shares, having sold mine a few years ago. Um, I haven't looked at the detail of this, but I'd be really interested to see where the majority of that growth has been coming from, because we know, particularly over the last few years, Sage Intacct, which is an acquisition they made, gosh, what, 5 or 6 years ago now, was driving the majority of growth and expansion for Sage as a business more broadly. And obviously that means that, looking at other products like X3, but also Line 50 and the cloud offerings, the broader cloud offerings, need to catch up, need to carry on growing and scaling. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. I had an interesting conversation actually whilst I was away last week on the ski trip, of talking about, wondering if Sage is undervalued. Their market cap's around about 10 billion approximately. And if you kind of compare that to Zero, which obviously a newer company, only got one single product. Their market capitalization, even though the share price has been tanking recently, is still probably above Sage. Or more or less equivalent now. With the foreign exchange rate differences and stuff. And it's like, well, how is it that Sage, with a multitude of products in market, all pretty capable, is seemingly undervalued potentially, especially when you compare it to Zero, and obviously a huge gap to Intuit. So maybe there's more to come from this. Maybe there's an opportunity for Sage to really grow and do more. But yeah, exciting times, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a bit more that I've got from Sage as well. So Sage is also bringing AI into its operations, and it has been bringing AI into its operations with the launch of Sage Copilot. But this time it's Sage Copilot to Sage Operations. So the cloud platform for manufacturing and distribution. So it's a very familiar pitch in terms of what we've seen it doing across the board, and the technology, better visibility across the stock, orders, fulfillment, earlier warnings on bottlenecks, and fewer manual checks. So the Copilot surfaces the risks inside the day-to-day workflows so that the teams don't have to stitch together the insights across the different systems. But what is notable is the framing. So it's domain specific for advice embedded into operational data. So Sage is positioning Copilot as a step towards more autonomous agentic workflows that helps the teams act sooner and with protecting service levels and scaling without the admin headache. So the promise seems very sensible, but I guess and it's to a point that you made on the last podcast anyway, accountants in general, stay clear-eyed, need to continue. It's not out of the realms of what we're working in at the moment. Everyone sees the cost of AI slop when the tools overreach without having the right context. The Sage's advantage in this is control, so closed data, define workflows, and accountability. So if the Copilot stays firmly in the role of signal and support and not an unsupervised decision maker, which if anybody is doing that, then why? But it's a net positive overall for the software. The bigger question is trust and governance. So as the tools edge towards taking control of the actions, not just flagging the issues, the next step we can probably see is that we'll want clarity on audit trails, overrides, liabilities, making sure the cover on those liabilities is right, upgrading your insurance. Used properly, this kind of AI reduces the operational noise. Used carelessly is probably exactly what we expect. Risks moving errors faster through the system. But the direction makes sense. And I think that so long as we know human oversight remains a deliberate design choice, which to your very well put point on, when we had textbooks, it's not like you could blame the textbook for the mistake that you made as an accountant. But yeah, it looks super interesting. To the point that we were just talking about in terms of how Sage is valued, this is a clear breakaway when you compare this to how Zero are implementing AI into their technology. It feels like these guys are much further ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. Although I think the challenge is, particularly when you look at Sage products, it's so difficult to compare the leading products and and sort of compare and contrast their AI implementation, because some of it's under the hood, some of it's in your face in the user interface, and we know that some of the stuff that all of these companies, whether it's Sage, Zero, Intuit, etc., have been pushing out. Some of it has failed, which is fine. I mean, that's just part of the development curve and the experimentation side of things. And some of it has started to be more successful. I guess what we are seeing, like you say, is like some deviation in how these technologies are applied and what that means. And I guess ultimately for me, what I'd like to see all of these products doing is getting closer to the users and actually making sure that what they're building is really, really useful for us, whether it's accountants or businesses, so that they are improving workflows and automating things that are fundamentally like a waste of time in terms of data input or human input. But whilst keeping, like as you said, the other side of it, which is the oversight and the management side of things, where a human is needed in these things. I feel at the moment that that's not being done particularly well. I don't think any of these firms or any of these businesses are engaging particularly well with the user base, and so that is, for me, the risk at the moment is just build, build, build without any real focus on what is it that the users want, and how does that work. Yeah, and let's not forget that whilst AI is really, really exciting, there are still some like fundamental product features or product capabilities missing from all of these products. All of the GLs that we look at and stuff, there are still missing links that need to be fixed as well. And so whilst there's clearly a prioritization of AI functionality and capability, it'd be nice actually just to fix some of the missing bits as well of the jigsaw. And so you'd have a much clearer picture as a consequence.
Fair point.
I've got a little bit as well on this Sage AI stuff, and this maybe leads into how Sage are building this capabilities. They just recently announced a partnership with Augusta Labs. This is an applied AI lab effectively built to work with enterprise organizations, but also they're building their own AI tools and capabilities and functionality. But essentially I mean, you won't see this as a user at Sage per se, because this is a collaboration in the back end in terms of product teams. But essentially what Sage are going to be doing is building out an AI center of excellence with the Augusta Labs teams. And the team from Augusta Labs, who have a whole bunch of like AI engineering nerds, are going to be working directly with Sage's product teams and the organization that kind of builds all of these various products and develops functionality, to expand that capability and to build more functionality and obviously help them on that transition, that shift to AI. So this is really exciting. Like I say, from a user perspective, I guess you won't really see anything badged as Augusta coming into the product, but effectively what we'll see more and more of as a consequence of this, hopefully, is that we will see more and more AI tools and capability built into Sage products going forward. And this is going to be, in collaboration with these guys. Interestingly enough, I mean, the particular areas of focus that they talk about is looking at work streams around Sage Payroll. And I think we've talked quite a lot on the pod about payroll, still has some real opportunity to be more automated and there's some things that can happen there. The Sage Active, which is a product which is probably less well known, I'm working on that. And then Sage 300, which, to be honest, I thought was a product that had been mothballed a long time ago, because that was something that was kind of like operating in the not-for-profit space for a while, and I think is operating in some European countries and possibly the US as well. But Sage 300 is basically a desktop product, kind of like with elements of functionality over the top of what the original Sage 200 had. But yeah, I personally not interested in Sage 300. That's a dead product to me. It doesn't need any more development. It just needs killing off. So interesting to see that they're working on that. But the usual kind of stuff will start to appear: agentic workflows, improving pipelines, and looking at how else they can bake AI into these products. So let's see what happens. It's going to be interesting to see how quick these things turn around and how much influence Augusta can have within Sage, because I'm sure there'll be some challenges potentially in terms of like how open-minded people are to some of the ideas that they may come up with.
Do you think they are starting with those work streams as a test, as a means to evaluate the success that they managed to implement agentic workflows into something that's fairly sleepy, like you said?
Maybe. I don't really know why they've picked those. I mean, like I say, payroll is the one obvious one, where there's still big automation opportunities. Obviously, there are bigger risks as well because you're dealing with a lot more personal data. But I think, Sage Payroll as a product, if it could be highly automated, highly optimized, that would really set it apart from its competitors and its peers because, the challenge with payroll products nowadays is that they do feel fairly samey, and really what you're looking at is like, is there, typically as you get a bigger payroll bureau or something like that, what you're looking for is like the weird niche stuff. Like, can you deal with I don't know, like NHS pensions, or can you deal with local government pension schemes if you're going to take on kind of a payroll in one of those jurisdictions? That's not that sexy and exciting to most people, but it's the weird niche stuff that does come up. And Ryan and I talked about an error that had been discovered on pensions and maternity pay, and a lot of the payroll products had not dealt with that. And I don't know if Sage have identified that as an issue or not. It's these kind of things where we just want the technology to work, right? And then the challenge for payroll is often around capturing information, extracting that information, then processing it as effectively as possible.
More importantly, the Centre for Excellence is based in Portugal, so it'll be a nice
Very cool.
offsite for all of the Sage folk.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I've got a little update as well from QBO, just switching it up here in terms of like some additional inventory functionality that they're launching. So, QuickBooks Desktop has been knocking about for donkeys, and one of the challenges, whilst they've been sort of switching off access to QuickBooks Desktop and moving people to the online product, has been a clash in terms of like the capability and functionality of the online version compared to the desktop version. So, one of these big releases that's coming out now is that the QuickBooks Online has got a whole bunch of additional inventory stock management functionality coming into the product, which was already in the desktop version. And so this is basically Intuit's play to kind of level up their systems and products and to kind of like try and drown out the noise of people objecting about switching products, moving from desktop to cloud, because clearly that's where they want people to be going. Essentially, this additional functionality is now going to be in, and this, you have to hold on to your hats here and deal with this because there's a whole bunch of stuff coming. But QuickBooks Online Plus, QuickBooks Online Advanced, and Intuit Enterprise Suite. All of these are going to have this enhanced functionality and capability baked into them. If you're using QuickBooks Online Simple Start or QuickBooks oh my God, QBO Essentials, can't get this out. You can add that functionality on top, so it'll be an additional subscription to get that, so that you can kind of level up and get this functionality. But that's kind of what it's all about. This is inevitably going to be launching into the US product first, and it will dribble down into the UK products and other products around the world after that. But yeah, so I mean, this is a common problem, is a common story that we're seeing. Similar issues with the Sage Line 50 switching to Sage Business Cloud as well. If you're trying to move between those products, that the level of comparability around functionality is still missing. And again, we've seen this with other people like BrightPay when they move in their payroll product from the desktop to the cloud. The cloud version didn't have all the functionality, and this is fundamentally what people are expecting. We want comparability. Why would we move from a really super capable product on the desktop to a less capable product in the cloud when essentially we're going to be paying pretty much the same? Unsurprisingly, consumers are pushing back on these things.
Very interesting. Is there a big difference in terms of functionality of even just the things that how the user interacts with that in relative to other softwares as well?
So, relative to other software, that's an interesting question. So, I mean, I guess some of that advanced functionality that was there in the desktop products would, if you wanted that in the cloud and wanted to use your QuickBooks or Intuit in the cloud, you would have had to go for a third-party add-on to kind of had that similar level of functionality, and then more as a consequence. So you're looking at products like the usual sort of stock management systems that we see. So, Deer, Sin7, all of that now basically the same product, Unleashed, obviously, and a few others. Ironically, those products are more capable than core inventory capabilities of QuickBooks Desktop because they've got other functionality around sort of online shopping and integrations into shipping and platforms and stuff. But that's the challenge here, and I guess for customers of these products who moved early and then integrated with something more capable, the challenge then for Intuit is like, can you drag back those customers back into your core product, or will they just sort of disappear because they've got a better set of functionality with these add-ons that they've gone for?
Yeah, super interesting. I think also, just like you said, there's the migration of moving something into a more sophisticated environment that makes it more accessible. Then there's the upgrade of the way that operation can be made more effective because technology has moved on, times have moved on, and the way things are processed and calculated have moved on. So the thing that I quite liked about this update was in particular how they shift the thinking from what might have been dated ways of valuing or assessing the profit of the stock. You know, when my good old days of like working logistics, LIFO, FIFO, but they've they're reevaluating even the way that should operate because we have so many more online businesses and how they process the management of their inventory.
Yeah.
Very good update. I have something from one of our lovely community members and sponsors, Xledger, who have plugged finance into the arts engine. So they have announced a native integration with Tessitura, a specialist CRM ticketing and fundraising platform used by more than 750 arts organizations worldwide. So integration brings ticketing, fundraising, and CRM data directly into Xledger's finance system in real time. So for venues like the Newcastle Theatre Royale, the payoff is practical. There's fewer manual journals, clearer deferred income tracking, and finance teams spending less time keying data and more time analysing show and project information, which is far more interesting. So for arts and cultural organisations, it's about a single source of truth, aligning the box office reality with what's happening at the ledger level without having spreadsheets in the middle. So a strong example of boring but powerful accounting tech. It's not flashy. It's not AI integration. It's not anything that, we need to, it's not like a novel. Well, I say it's not novel, it's an integration, but it's done properly and it's hyper relevant for the art sector where cash flow timing, deferred income, project reporting, that sort of stuff really matter when it's needed. And it's also a good strategic signal. Xledger owning and maintaining the integration reduces a common risk in niche sectors where you have fragile third-party connectors that break at like very inconvenient times. So the caveat, this system works best for organizations already committed though to Tessitura and Xledger, of course. Not a plug and play fix for smaller venues running lighter stacks, but for mid to large arts organizations, it's a kind of vertical specific integration that quietly delivers some real ROI and shows where accounting platforms can add the most value if they go really, really deep into specific sectors and not super broad. I really like this. And I think that when we were looking back at, even just Implicit and how they had been on a breakaway, it started by them really honing in and looking at specific verticals they could solve very, very well for. And this is a bit like that.
I agree. And I mean, I think this is just a demonstration of the fact that Xledger are listening to the customers in the markets that they're kind of like identified as niches for them. We know that they're strong in kind of like this not-for-profit, cultural sort of space. A lot of these a lot of these spaces tend to be charitable in some way, shape, or form, or have a trading part of a charitable organization. It does obviously depend on the structure. And this kind of functionality that they've now got as a consequence of this integration is typically only available again in the kind of zero Intuit space, and obviously that then places some restrictions if you've got quite a large scale or a bigger operation. And I know from experience of dealing with similar organizations in the past, this can be quite challenging to then managing some of those products because of volume challenges and other things. So it's great to see that Xledger have built this out. And another demonstration, I think, of how they're listening to their marketplace. I've got a little bit of a pivot back to the good old AI topic of the last couple of years. PwC did a survey of around about 4,500 business leaders fairly recently. I've actually got the report on my laptop to read in detail. I haven't quite got to catching up on that. But one of the key headlines that they found, and they were talking to CEOs predominantly of like larger organizations, that I think essentially a lot of these businesses that have been doing experimentation with AI and making significant investments in some instances had basically found no benefit, no uptick in revenue, no uptick in cost savings, and really just sort of stuck really, and that's the real challenge. I think let's just read the detail here. Yeah, only 12% had reported both lower costs and higher revenue, whilst 56% saw no benefit, and 26% saw some reduced costs, but nearly as many experienced cost increases as a consequence. So obviously the investments in AI were not really paying off. And I think maybe this is an example of what we've been sort of talking about over the last few weeks and months, is that we know that firms and organizations are buying into this stuff, but not really doing it in a particularly well structured way, and so they're not getting good outcomes. And so perhaps this is a little bit unsurprising in terms of like how things are sort of framed, because if you go about this doing it really well, then you're going to get some benefit. If you don't do it, have a structured way of approaching AI and looking at where it will have the most impact in your business, then you're not going to see any benefit. To be fair, now in my role at HLB, we saw this from a survey of business leaders back in 2024 when we were asking them about like AI investments and whether or not they were seeing any impact. And again, the results were somewhat similar to what PwC have got here.
Again, it's a survey of 4,500 CEOs. I really would love to know more about the sample, because what size of business? 4,500 CEOs in given how many companies there are in the UK, is tiny, John. And to me, it's just, okay, I get that they're trying to find something that then fits the narrative, says AI is hyperbole and, don't bother changing anything. It feels biased. It feels biased when I look and I talk to other businesses all around. Yes, there's some resistance on how AI can fit into the strategy, especially if we look in the accounting sector. There is a little bit of a pause, but then you see amazing applications coming down the track where they are leveraging AI. We're talking about Sage and how they're leveraging AI and how much investment they're putting into Sage operations, which will in effect take them down that path. We're talking about how Noom was launched a few weeks back. We're talking about treasury applications have then started imbuing AI into the technology and making it much more sophisticated for businesses to run their FX and run their treasury in real time, generate better interest from it. So I just think, where did they find these 4,500 CEOs? Where?
I mean, I do wonder though if, when you look at some of these products and these developments and stuff that we're seeing, quite often they do come with a price increase, or there is an additional cost of investment with more software, for example. And I think, again, in my experience, from working with businesses and working in accounting firms, is like sometimes it's incredibly difficult to measure the marginal gains that you might be making and really like turn that into pounds and pence on the bottom line in terms of what the real impact is. So I do think there are some challenges around measurement of impact, and particularly where let's say we're looking at an accounting work stream where maybe you're just improving a level of automation, and that level of automation is making a very, very marginal improvement. It's very difficult for firms and businesses to accurately measure that. Let's say you take a transaction processing from, say, taking 10 seconds to 2 seconds. The reality is most organizations are not measuring time at that kind of granular level and not really then being able to sort of approximate the impact. And so I think there is definitely an intangible element to this. And again, I guess historically we're used to seeing significant changes. You move from desktop to cloud accounting historically, and you could see transformational impacts, because you weren't just saving seconds, you were saving minutes or even hours in some instances as a consequence of that change. We are talking much more now with AI, at the moment at least, around sort of fairly marginal gains, I think, in a lot of work streams and processes that businesses operate in.
So closing out with a couple of other stories. Thomson Reuters has launched One Source Sales and Use Tax AI, an AI-driven sales and use tax compliance tool aimed squarely at corporate tax teams. So the pitch is very familiar, but super ambitious. It's automate data ingestion, validation, mapping, and filing across more than 19,000 US tax jurisdictions, cutting compliance cycles from weeks to days. Early customers are reporting large time savings, to the point that John was making earlier, that they can actually define those time savings and reduced audit exposure, as well as faster closes, with humans staying firmly in the loop for final review and sign-off. This is Thomson Reuters doubling down on what it calls a touchless compliance, heavy automation by default, manual work by exception. It's a much more sophisticated approach than we've seen Thomson Reuters launch with before, in terms of where they feel this can really be ambitious but also meet a demand that the customer is having. The sharper industry take is it's not ChatGPT in the tax department, and that's the sort of point. Unlike general AI tools causing chaos elsewhere, this is tightly scoped, rules-driven automation, which has existed for at least, the last couple of decades. It's built off the back catalogue and their decades of tax content and jurisdictional logic. So that's why it feels very credible. I think that context really matters. This is enterprise-grade tooling for US sales and US tax complexity, not something most UK practices or SMEs will ever touch. And the touchless still depends on the high quality of source data with strong internal control. So what we've heard before, garbage in means penalties out. So strategically, it does show where AI works in accounting, narrow domains, like we've said, when we've touched upon in this episode, high rules density, clear audit trails, back catalogue or a substantial amount of context data from the past. The future isn't AI replacing tax professionals. It's AI taking the grind out of the parts that people don't really want to do, or it certainly has taken them a lot of time. And it's this being able to see something as simple and as frictionless as that desktop to cloud, seeing the change in how we spend our time. So the risk and the judgment in this case still stays with the human being. So a really great release by Thomson Reuters, and we'll be interested to see how people who are using this are getting on with it. So if you are a customer of this, then please do feel free to share your feedback. And then finally, ending out the week with something, if you don't already follow this gentleman, then you probably should. His name is Dan Needle. Is someone that has been instrumental in tackling and taking down larger entities, and also a lot of fake tax experts. But this week, he was the victim of what seemed like a bit of an identity theft. So the series of fake AI generated videos featuring Dan Needle were taken off YouTube following a complaint. So YouTube removed the 4 videos within 36 hours of reporting the report of fake information. But Dan, who obviously did also get to catch it, said it was such a weird experience seeing a video of him with the voice that's nothing like him, but talking complete nonsense. And it was, a fake voiceover with nonsensical comments about tax. Now, anyone who reads Dan's content online will know he's always quite measured. He's got a lot of screenshots, a lot of evidence to back it up. He does really, really substantial reports where he goes into the depth of what is happening in a particular, whether it's a particular case or a particular video. So this is really interesting to see someone targeting in a way and using his profile to also spread false noise and news about tax information that people would take seriously if they knew him. And also it's just a bit of a sad state of affairs when that's how things are shaping up for most of us who create content and put our voices and faces out there. So really good to see that it was taken down, but just to say that maybe it's probably wise to, a word to the wise, try to follow the person that you do follow directly, and then it means that you're able to spot the fake a lot quicker. So we're sorry to hear about that, but thankfully it's been removed. That brings us to the close of another week's episode of Digi-Tools in Accrual World. Thank you for joining us. Like we've said, if you enjoy getting accounting updates on your tech stack, if you're a fan of keeping on top of the latest news and seeing the shorts of what we post online, then please do take a look at our website. It allows you to find an array of information very quickly about any of the partners that we speak about on these episodes. And please do take the time to reach out, get in touch with us, and let us know what you like about the show, or if you'd like us to switch things up a little bit more. So we will catch you on the next one.